Welcome.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another one of CPDSO's weekly webinars. I am your host, Daniel Still, and today we have with us Alan Wherrett from Keynote Speaker. Thank you all for joining us today. I really appreciate that. We have people from all over the globe with us today. So I just want to put out a big, warm welcome, global welcome. We have people from the US, Africa, Asia, Middle East, Australia, all over the place, literally. So I just want to thank you for all joining us, whether you woke up early or stayed up late. Thank you for being here. Just a quick one, guys. If we can, turn off our videos, would be much appreciated. If we can just turn off our videos for us. There is going to be a lot of interaction, but it is going to be via the chat. So I do encourage you to get involved with the interaction on the chat, but if you could please just switch off the videos. Hey Sandy, thank you. Thank you for that. And as well, thank you guys for switching off those videos. Much appreciated. So this is an open session. We do have both members and non-members on this session, and the video is going to be shared afterwards. That's why I'm asking you to turn off the videos. It's going to be shared and put up on YouTube. So for GDPR purposes, we do ask for all of the videos to be turned off. Thank you, and much appreciated. This was a highly subscribed session, much anticipated. We've got a lot of people on today, and I'm sure it's going to be really interesting and really interactive. So just to go through a few chat rules, like I said, the chat is going to be heavily used today. So we do have some rules in there. If there is any complaints, you can either email me at daniel.still@cpdstandards.com, or you can message me directly on the chat and just put a C in front of that. So just put a C in front of that so I know it's a complaint. I'm not expecting to get any, but the caveat is there for you guys to engage in that if you need to. Next, no self-promoting. So in the time periods when the chat is open to the whole room, please, no self-promotion, no sharing of links. I will track you down. So please, no sharing of links in that chat. Questions will be asked by Alan. In those moments, I will open up the chat, and then obviously you guys can just engage with the questions, which would be very much appreciated. Lastly, feel free to share any support and obviously those all important questions for the question and answer session. So we are going to have a Q&A session towards the end. Please feel free to get those questions in early. Just put a Q in front of that, and I will be able to pick that up in the chat. I know it's going to be busy today, so please do make sure you put a Q in front so I can pick them out easily. It will really be helpful for me. So yes, that's the chat rules. I hope everyone caught that. Please, like I said, for those that are still coming into the room, we are having the cameras off today. So if you could, and Saba, if you could just turn those off for me. Thank you very much. I would love to see your guys' faces. I really would. But this session is actually a no camera session because it is going to be shared on YouTube. Right, just a few quick polls before we get into the presentation. So literally it's going to take a couple seconds. So I just want to know if you're a member or if you're a non-member. It's on your screens right now. So please just let me know if you are a member or a non-member of the CPDSO. So you've got a couple options there. I'm a new member. I'm not a member yet, but I'm considering, which is a great one. Not a member yet, just here for the information on the topic. And I've been a member for 2 years. So I'm going to leave that for a couple more seconds. And we've got members, we've got people flooding into the room still. So welcome if you're just coming in from wherever you are in the globe. Big warm welcome. Okay, I'm going to end that poll now. Thank you guys for engaging in that one. And then just a quick follow-up from that. Just one more poll quickly. So I just want to know, if you are a non-member, would you like to be contacted? We do contact people after these sessions. So we could contact you next week to give you a bit of information, more information about what we do, what the membership's all about, where it involves, how it can help your company organization as well. So those calls are obviously free of charge. and one of our sales reps will be in contact with you early next week. So I'm going to leave that for a few more seconds, and I'm going to actually press on. So in the chat just now, I'm going to put a couple of links. So one of the links is to up and coming events that we will be hosting. So please do feel free to obviously click on that link, check out the rest of the events. It's in the chat now. It's in the waiting room now. It's in the chat now. So you can go and get yourself registered for any future events that we have coming up. And also, just there in the chat now is also the link to our YouTube channel. Feel free to go and see any past sessions that you missed, and you can obviously go ahead and watch that content and yeah, get the most out of it. So thank you guys. I'm going to end that poll. Thank you guys for participating, and everyone that said yes, they would like to be contacted. Someone will be in contact with you next week. So swiftly moving on. We have a 50-minute session. It's going to be broken down into about 40 minutes of presentation, 35, 40 minutes of presentation from Alan. And then we're going to have a Q&A session. Like I said, please do get those questions into me at any point during the session. Just put a Q in front of that so I know that it is a question for the Q&A session. Afterwards, there will be an email sent out, and in that email, you will get a recording of this presentation along with the slides. Well, there's actually not going to be any slides today because Alan does things slightly different. We'll get into that in a second. Yeah, but the recording will be available with obviously contact details of Alan too. So here's the man himself. Here's his picture. So he's the lead coach and director of Keynote Speaker. He's been public speaking for the last 20 years plus, and he's spanned 20 years, like I said, and across international borders. After a career shift in 2016, he started up his own business, Keynote Speaker, and he's been training the principles of public speaking, not death by PowerPoint, but engaging interactive presentations, the like of which he's going to do today for us. So Alan, without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. So it's nice to have you guys all here. It's nice also that Daniel said you're from all over the globe. That's pretty special. So thanks for coming to see us. So hopefully, at some stage, Daniel can stop this presentation, and then my video will be on your screen. If it's not, you can always pin my video so that I'm the main part of your screen. If you click on speaker view, you can have that as the case. So that hopefully we can have a nice bit of interaction between you and I. Even though I can't see your faces, you're just going to have to pretend that when I look at you, I'm looking at you. So I thought I would begin our presentation by asking you a really important question. Now, this question is has the potential to start wars. It can completely polarize people in a room. It can break up families. So I'd like you, in this poll that we're going to put out there, just to say yes or no as to whether you agree with me or not. So the question is, who do you believe created the best animated films? Now, I seem to believe that it is definitely, I can see one person jumped on there already, they thought they knew what the question was. I think that it's Dreamcast, whereas DreamWorks, whereas other people think it's Disney. Now, what do you think? Do you agree with me? Yes, do you think it's DreamWorks? Do you think, no, it's definitely Disney? Now, I mean, while we're going through this, you might think, what a sad question to start with. And hey, when you've got children that are 5- and 6-year-old, you are subjected to all sorts of terrible dross on the TV. But fortunately, we have the likes of Disney and DreamWorks that have produced some incredible films. And the great thing about these films are me and my wife can sit there and enjoy it at the same time as my children, and yet we'll be laughing at completely different things. But one of the beautiful things about whether it's Disney or Dreamcast, it looks like I'm outnumbered here. So most people, 58% of you say Disney produced the better films, but hey, I'll forgive you just for today. But whatever the case, whether it's one or the other, they do something incredibly well. And you can take an awful lot of lessons for public speaking from the film industry when you create your own presentations. Oh, look at that, it's narrowing the gap now. We've got 43% on my side. But what are some of the things that we can transfer from some of these films across into when we're constructing and building our presentations so that we can be confident that we've got something that will be worthwhile delivering? Well, the first thing is found in their introductions. The introduction to a film is pivotal. And I'm sure you'll probably agree with that. And one of my favorite DreamWorks films, I mean, they've got some amazing ones like How to Train Your Dragon and Shrek. But my favorite at the moment is probably Megamind. Now, Megamind opens in a really interesting way. It kind of grabs you. And I'll just show you the screen share. And it's not a very good picture, I've got to be honest. I'll just take this poll down as well, so that it's not in your way of the screen share. It's not a very good picture because obviously I'm breaking all the copyright rules in the world by screenshotting a DreamWorks film. But the beginning of the movie starts with this guy dropping and falling to his death with a monologue, something along the lines of, could this day get any worse? I've been to prison. I've lost the girl of my dreams. I've got my butt kicked pretty hard. And now I'm falling to my death. But how did it all come to be like this? So, I mean, it sets a pretty dramatic start, doesn't it? Really? And when we're thinking about our presentations, do we do the same sort of thing? Do we throw something dramatic into the mix so that it piques people's curiosity? Or do we get into the whole, hi, my name is Alan, I'm a speaker and I do lots of training with people and I've, reeling off your CV? Or even worse, have you ever heard the statement, and put your thumbs up or some sort of reaction on the screen if you like, but have you ever heard a public speaking coach say, what you need to do is you need to tell them what you're going to tell them, and then you tell them what you were going to tell them, and then you tell them what you've told them. Now, do filmmakers ever do that? Do they ever set the scene and tell you exactly how this film is going to run for the duration of the film? Well, they just don't. They set it up with something intriguing, and then they put a few curveballs in there as well to keep your interest as you go along. They will never say, this is what you're going to have in the next scene, and this is what's going to happen. They'll try and keep you guessing so that you are engaged. And so as a public speaker, when you're writing your presentations, if you've got a sales pitch, then the key is those first 5 minutes when you can really think about something that's completely out of the box. Maybe it might be a divisive question. Maybe it might be more serious than who do you prefer, DreamWorks or Disney. It might be something that actually has value in people's lives. Or you could start with an interesting story, and that gets people's attention. But the second thing that filmmakers do really, really well, and that you can see evident in Megamind as well, I'm just going to stick to Megamind because it's fairly non-offensive, isn't it? But they instantly try to get you to appeal or to resonate with the main character. they want you to be on side with the main character. And in Megamind, they do this really well because they've got this contrast between the good and the evil. And obviously, Megamind is the baddie of the story, if you don't know it. And he was effectively ejected from his planet when it was destructed in this like escape pod. And he comes to land on the Earth. But in the meantime, somebody from a different planet is ejected as well. And it's this baby that is just, I mean, it makes you a little bit sick, really. It's somebody who's like this Mr. Perfect, beautiful, perfect quiff. He can fly, he's got powers, he can do everything. And in the film, as you see him grow up, he turns into this really, really smarmy, somebody that everybody loves to hate. Whereas, on the other hand, you've got Megamind, who ended up being knocked off his course and being grown up in a prison. Things just don't go right for him. He tries to be good, but he's vulnerable, he's insecure. He's somebody that we can relate to, and that contrast really helps us to be drawn to him. And that's something that we also need to establish relatively early on in our presentations. You see, that whole CV, the 150-word brief that, a little bit of which Daniel read to you this afternoon as an introduction, people don't want to know that. They want to know your personality. They want to get to know you a little bit, not what you've achieved, what you've accomplished. They want to know, is this a nice person? Can I relate to this person? Because ultimately, it's people that affect people, isn't it? It's not facts or information. It's not this ream of slides that's going to help you to really feel like you're confident in a product. When you hear and listen to somebody speak to you with a bit of genuine authenticity, that's the thing that's going to appeal to you. So as far as it goes, making something interesting, you have just two very, very brief examples of what we learn from the entertainment industry, if you like, the film industry, of how you can start your presentations off in a really interesting way. See, the stark contrast of the entertainment industry, where we can learn an awful lot, is, dare I say it, politics and business. You have an awful lot of people that are in a pattern of doing things a certain way, and they find it difficult to break free from this pattern because everybody does a PowerPoint. Well, you have to do a webinar with a PowerPoint, talking through slides, because that's just what everybody does. But is it interesting? So we've kind of very, very briefly touched on how you can make a presentation interesting. Obviously, those two areas, they're not the only things that can make a presentation interesting. But we're going to have a little bit of a screen break now, and I'm going to give you 30 seconds. And what I'd like you to do, we're going to open the chat now as well. And what I'd like you to do is try and find something around you, something that's edible. Now, I'm going to screen share for you a second, and I'm going to give you 30 seconds to find something that is edible, and then we can come back and we can sit down and we can talk about something that you found. Okay? So, we all game. Let's go. Let's do this thing. You've got 30 seconds to find something that's going to be edible. And when you come back, hopefully the chat will be open, and then you'll be able to write down what it is you found, because we're breaking into the next little section. The second question of this talk was, is it engaging? 4, 3, 2, and 1. There we go. So let's have a look. Let's open this chat then. Okay, I knew that would come up. Chewing gum.
Yeah, the chat is open, guys. Some people are still messaging me privately. So we've got kiwi, we've got blueberries, we've got all kinds of stuff.
We got a banana, we got apple, we got lots of fruit. That's good. It's good we've got a healthy crowd amongst us. Who's got
sausages?
Sausages. Okay. Good. Strepsils. I mean, this is getting our juices flowing, isn't it? We've got a lot of bananas and apples on the go. A hot water with lemon. I love it. A Cuba cheesecake. Who has a Cuba cheesecake just to hand at 2:30 in the afternoon? Who has
Someone's got cat treats.
Okay, good. So I think we've got a really nice share of things to hand, and I've got to say that the vast majority of it is very unhealthy. So I think we can look with a little bit of pride to those who have said something that contains fruit. So nice work. So what's the point in getting up and getting something that's edible? Well, I mean, I haven't just done that for a little bit of fun, but we're talking about what makes something engaging. So getting people involved in something, that is obviously an engaging thing to do within a presentation. But when you choose something to talk about that involves the senses, you know, your taste, your smell, your touch, things that you can hear, it does something incredible within your brain because it stimulates memories. And oftentimes, especially when it's food related, it stimulates some good feelings, doesn't it? So to make a presentation engaging, go into a particular sense can really help you to make that engaging. Now, I just thought I would illustrate this with an example. You see, I've got a talk that I deliver, and it's all about how things in nature can really benefit us as humans. Now, would you agree that we can learn so much from the things that we see around us? But would you agree that we really do benefit when we're out and about in nature? I've got my conservatory doors next to me, and when I work in my dining room looking out the doors into a really long garden, it makes you feel good. And so these sorts of feelings, they're not unique to me, because everybody feels it. Everybody enjoys something about nature. And so to illustrate that, I thought I would talk about something that's fairly innocuous, fairly boring, really. So you might have a boring topic, like beans. Now, who likes beans? For the most part, I would say that it is not the most exciting thing to talk about. But it's something that is useful when we're talking about how we benefit from nature. And I'll just set the scene. Now, I wonder if you're abroad, then this might be more of a stretch for you to imagine. But if we're in the UK, then this will be a cinch. So imagine for a moment that you have chosen to take a day off and you want to go and visit a town or a city, an old-fashioned town in the UK, and it's a miserable, rainy day. Have you got that? Can you imagine that? It's fair to say that it's pretty much most days between September and March, isn't it, in the UK, a miserable, rainy day. Fortunately, the rain stopped at lunchtime today. But if you're in warmer climates, then I bet you're enjoying yourself. But the thing is, you go to this town, this area, and you're wandering about, you see some of the old beautiful buildings. It reaches about 11:30 and it's time to warm up. So you would make your way to this hotel that you see out on the high street, and you make your way up the steps into these double doors, and it opens up to this beautiful grand entrance hall with a wide mahogany staircase with a real plush carpet going up. You can see the carpet pins on each step. And as it gets to the first tier, bends and goes back on itself up to the first floor. You know, beautiful, typical English hotel. And you veer to your left, and you can see this really, really beautiful, plush dining room slash, what do they call it? Entertaining room. And as you go, you can see this little booth, and the waiter or the waitress takes your order, and he invites you to take whatever seat you wish. And against the wall, you can see the fireplace with the open fire that's been lit and is gently warming the room. And either side of the fireplace, you can see two chairs covered in velvet, nice, tall, wing-back chairs. And as you sit down, it's like sitting on a cloud. Can you picture yourself there, comfortable by the fire? You can feel that this side of you warming by the fire as you talk to the one that you're with. Now, as he turns up, the waiter, with your order, he comes with this lovely steaming cup of coffee. And you can't help but sniff it, can you? A really good cup of coffee. And it fills you with anticipation for what you're going to drink. But what you also don't know is that the chef who works in the hotel, he grew up in the south of Germany on the border of Switzerland, and he trained as a chocolatier. So on the plate next to your coffee, you have, this is what I had by my side, some Lindor. And this German chef is an expert at making this beautiful, luxuriant chocolate. How are you feeling? Now, how are you feeling about beans now? Because essentially you've got one bean that's been roasted and ground and mixed with water and a bit of sugar and milk. And you've got another bean that's been mixed with sugar, turned into butter and formed into this beautiful thing called chocolate, which by the looks of things, a lot of you have got to hand this afternoon. So you're in this comfortable environment with two things that are essentially a product of beans. Now that gets your juices flowing, doesn't it? Just thinking about chocolate and coffee. But you see, there's so many things that you can, that then you can go off and talk about. But once you get to the stage where you've got somebody who's almost salivating over the things that they have in their mind, and then they're in their happy place and they're willing to listen to you for a little bit longer. So introducing things into your presentation that involve your senses, whether it be your touch, your smell, the things that you hear, maybe the crackling of a fire, the breeze in your face, whatever the case may be, those things we can all relate to. And they will get your listeners' minds engaged so that they're happy to continue listening to you. While we're on the subject of engagement, I wonder if we can pop the polls out again. And this time, each poll I've done has been very simple for Daniel. It's just a yes/no question. So in terms of engagement, how many people have listened to public speaking coaches or have attended some courses about public speaking, and the trainer has said you must look into the camera. You must focus your attention into the camera of your webcam. Just keep looking into the camera. So maybe that it's about a 50-50 split, 54-46. So what are the reasons why that is good? And what are the reasons why it's not quite so good as to hold your attention into a camera? Well, recently I saw a video blog, and it was really interesting because it was from a public speaking trainer. And I'll give you a little insight into what it was like. You see, she was telling me what to do on her video blog. And she was saying exactly what she was doing, exactly what I should do. And I really struggled to take my eyes off her. And it wasn't in a good way. It was because I was getting a little bit freaked out because she wasn't blinking. Now, I don't know, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm a little bit judgmental. But let's open up the chat. But what words do you think could spring to your mind if somebody that you met in normal everyday life just completely stared you in the eyes throughout your whole conversation? What words come to your mind? Now for me, unnerving, we've got alien, intense, weird, okay, creepy, crazy person, threatening. So, yeah, freaked out. I mean, it is so true, isn't it? So looking into the camera, of course, is necessary. And in fact, when you're doing a presentation, it's so important that you are, the main part of the screen, because so many times you see webinars or video presentations and it's just the PowerPoint and your speaker is in this tiny little box in the top corner and you can see them chatting away. But I mean, in all honesty, they may as well just put some voice notes on the slides and just send the slide out, just send the presentation out, because can you actually see their eye contact? Can you actually feel close to somebody and connect with somebody if they're this tiny little box on the screen? Isn't it far better that you can actually see their face, that you can actually see where they're looking? I had another example of somebody else that I was listening to on LinkedIn, which was quite interesting because this person in particular quite often does a video blog. And you can see as she's doing it, because one of her suggestions is that if you've got your notes on the screen, it means that you can read your notes, and because the camera is just there and you're reading there, then you've got eye contact with the person and you can carry on reading. But the thing is, you can see that they're reading. It's not some mystical thing that they're looking at the camera simply because they're looking at the screen. You can see the eyes going from left to right as they're reading. And eye contact is so very important. Now, if you were talking to a friend in the pub and they were reading every portion of their conversation with you, then equally you would think that they were unnerving or scary or a little bit freaky or odd. So to be able to be an engaging speaker, we've touched on our senses, but also our eye contact. It needs to be so natural, as if we were having that conversation. In a room full of people, you wouldn't just look at one person. But when you're talking to people, you don't just stare at them in their eyes. There needs to be a balance, doesn't there? But there also needs to be a little bit of eye contact. So it's that little phrase, isn't it? A little bit of knowledge is dangerous, that if you stick to the you must look at the camera, then you may end up actually making people switch off and nervous and uncomfortable. So I wonder if there was one other thing that you thought would make an interactive and an engaging speaker. Let's open the chat again. What do you think the speaker would need to include?
Hey guys, the chat's open. Got a couple people messaging me privately saying body language, humor, energy, images. personality and intonation and expression in their voice, intonation of voice, cadence, audience participation, polls, bubbly humor, interaction with group, quiz, gentle voice and natural tone. Yeah, and then the list goes on. Variation of tone and pitch.
There we go. Not talking too much without interaction. So, I mean, hopefully, so far this afternoon, you've had a little bit of that I haven't tried to just tell you, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do, you need to be this. If you want to be a presenter, you need to do that, you need to listen to that. Because ultimately, when you are told what you need to do, it becomes a little bit of a lecture. And how do you feel? Well, you might as well turn your video off and stop listening and carry on with your work while you're listening to this presentation or meeting, because nobody likes to be told what to do. To ask questions is one of the most powerful ways that you can actually engage with your audience. And in our next part as well, we'll continue to look at questions further to see how they can be incredibly powerful. So we've looked at a couple very, very briefly. Again, only 3 points really about how we can be engaging. And of course, this is not a definitive list. It's not a definitive description of these topics either. But the next question was how to make it powerful. Is it powerful? So with our screen break now, what I'd like you to do, and I'll share my timer again, so feel free to get up and find something. And what I'd like you to find this time is something that can be construed as a tool. And then as soon as you're back, then type in your chat what you have managed to find, and we'll take it from there and see what you've got around you. Now, I've done a kind of Blue Peter thing where I've got everything to hand, so I haven't actually had to leave the room or leave my laptop. 3, 2, 1, and there we have it. Probably not enough time, is it? But I'm sure you've enjoyed the walk around if you did get up. So, a pen, the scribe's tool, a machete. Now, who's Kirsty 18 has got a machete? Don't go anywhere near her. Okay, scissors, coaster, paint roller. Okay, so I'm hoping that the people with like paint rollers, either they work or they're at home. Machete is truly worrying. I agree, Penny. Why anybody would have a machete to hand, I don't know. But I suppose it's nearly as bad as mine. You see, I brought one of these along. So I wonder, well, we'll keep the chat open, but I wonder if anybody in the audience knows what this is used for. Now, don't just say it's a hammer. Everybody will know that it's a hammer, but any ideas as to what type of hammer that's for? And this gives you a toffee hammer. This will give you a little insight into what I used to do for work. So it's close to a ball peen hammer, so close. A ball peen hammer is slightly different. It's got a smaller round end on it. So nice try, Penny. Thanks for the input though. So this hammer, it was used by myself in my previous job as a blacksmith or a farrier. Now, before my career change, due to my bad back, I worked as a farrier. And with that hammer, it's amazing what you can do, because it really only has one function, and that's to hit things. And yet, just simply by hitting things, you can create some incredible things. You can make a straight, flat, square section of steel into a beautiful round horseshoe with a lovely concave following in it for some nail holes, or you can turn an old rusty rasp into perhaps an ornate snake, or a candlestick. But it's not just, when you're thinking about using a tool for its power, it's not just about beating things, is it? It's not just about hitting things as hard as you can. It's using that particular tool skillfully. And every tool that we have as public speakers, as presenters, it has a purpose and it has a skillful way of using it and, well, a not so skillful way of using it. And one of the tools that is incredibly useful, we've touched on it a little bit, is the questions that we ask. And I'll give you an example about how questions can be incredibly valuable in a presentation or a meeting setting. You see, with my hammer here, now I can turn a square point into a round point, and all it takes is some overlapping blows to knock off the edges. So you turn the square into an octagon, and then you knock down the edges again to make a 16-sided shape, and then you keep on going until it's round, and you can make a really nice hammer finished round surface. But questions can do exactly the same thing in knocking an edge so that a square peg eventually fits a round hole. Now I'll give you a setting. A company that I have had dealings with of late. Now they have some very, very low wages compared to a lot of their industry competitors. And one of the issues that they face is staff retention, and the other one is customer service, a poor customer service. Now, you might think, well, this is a bit of an obvious one, really, but the problem is that in higher levels, they think that people really want to work for this company because of its vision, because of its objectives, its goals. And to a point that might be true. But if you went into this boardroom and said, I think we need to think about raising people's wages, what are you instantly going to get? Well, it's going to be a, don't even go there because we've got this business plan, isn't it? But what if we then used skillful questions instead? Maybe you went into the boardroom and instead of saying, I think we should, we could pose the questions, what are the challenges that you are currently facing as a business? And they could say, well, at the moment, I suppose it's retention of staff, and we've got a little bit of problem with our customer services. Okay. So how much money do you think that we spend? I mean, you surely know, how much money do we spend on recruitment? And if the answer's in the thousands, then you know, that flags are quite an issue, doesn't it, really? There's a lot of money going in a particular direction. And what about training? How much money do we spend on training? And these answers can feel a little bit innocuous, but they're knocking edges off very slowly. So we spend quite a lot of money on training. In fact, we boosted our training team so that it's nearly double the size that it used to be, so that we can train people effectively. Okay, and when people leave this company, you said retention's an issue. Do they leave within the industry? Do they go to somewhere else? Very often they do, yeah. So do you think it's worth me putting together a little bit of a plan to demonstrate how we can make sure that we maximize engagement and contentment at work, and put forward some strategies so that we can keep our staff? Do you think that would be a good idea? And then you'll bring in what was something as a square peg slowly into line with a round hole, but you haven't hit it head on and had that wall put up right in front of you by asking very careful, selective questions. So that's the difference between just hitting something and using something skillfully. But another thing that we mentioned a little bit in our quiz that can increase engagement is also something that is very, very powerful. And I think a few people in our chat, we touched on that. And that was the way that we use our voice. Now, our voice is possibly one of the most powerful things that we can use in public speaking. And so we can use our posture, we can use our eye contact, we can use stories and illustrations, but our voice is something that we can really use to the maximum so that we can make a powerful effect on our listener. And one of the exercises that I do when we're doing courses is a reading exercise, and you've probably done it yourselves. But I wonder if it's an exercise that I can do with you now. And for the sake of this exercise, what I'm going to do is just share with you a bedtime story routine picture from my own family. And I use this on the screen as you listen to a little bit of reading. And then we'll also open the chat at some point so that you can just give a little bit of feedback in the two different options that you're going to listen to. So here we have, oh, hang on a minute. Here we have the wrong picture. So there we go. Let's go back, shall we? So I've lost our Zoom. There we go. There we are. Okay, so bear with me. Sorry about this, folks. I told Daniel I was really good at this. So there we go. There's my bedtime story routine with my children. The thing is, what do you see in that picture? If you're using your voice well, then you can really captivate and make a really powerful point in your delivery. But as this is, you know, a very brief webinar, I'm not going to take very long, so I decided to choose a children's book, and it's called The Detective Dog by Julia Donaldson. She's the same author that wrote The Gruffalo, very talented author, and I love her books. But it's about a dog who basically is a detective by his smell. And I'll just take you to halfway along through the story, where the detective dog, she loves to find things, but one of her favorite days of the week is on Monday when she goes to school to be with the kids. She loves to listen to the kids read. So picking up the story, says she loves to read, she loves to listen to books about dinosaurs, books about knights, books about planets and meteorites, books about princes who turned into frogs, books about dragons and books about dogs. But then came a Monday when all was not well. Now sniffed the air and she smelled the wrong smell. Into the classroom the two of them hurried and found Mr. Jones looking terribly worried. He tugged at his hair and he let out a sigh. Peter looked round and he started to cry. Sniff, 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 what's going on? The books, cried out Peter, the books have all gone. Nell gave a growl when she heard the bad news. Now, do you get the point? I mean, in my mind, I've read quite clearly and fluently. I don't know whether you would agree with that. But do you think I have read to you in a powerful way? Have I touched any of your emotions in that little bit of reading? You see, when we do this exercise in our lessons, in some of our training sessions, we very often get people that will read that way. And it's because they're nervous, they're holding back something. They're almost afraid of embarrassing themselves because they haven't used the power that their voice can actually generate. But we'll open the chat in a minute and you can tell me the difference that you've noticed. But I'll read the same couple of pages again and just tell me when we open the chat what you feel the difference was. So she likes to listen to books about dinosaurs, books about knights, books about planets and meteorites, books about princes who turned into frogs, books about dragons, and books about dogs. But then came a Monday when all was not well. Now sniffed the air, and she smelled the wrong smell. Into the classroom the two of them hurried and found Mr. Jones looking terribly worried. He tugged at his hair and he let out a sigh. Peter looked round and he started to cry. Sniff, sniff, sniff. What's going on? The books, cried out Peter. The books have all gone. Nell gave a growl when she heard the bad news, but then started sniffing and searching for clues. Now, which one of those renditions do you think my children would have heard? I'll take that down now. So, we'll open the chat again. So did you notice any difference? I mean, I might have been very, very bad in the first or second, and I promise you I'm not perfect. But expression, engagement, the second, obviously, pitch and emphasis, pauses, sound effects, and emotion. You see, our voice can be such an incredibly powerful tool. But we need to have the confidence to be able to use it. Now, I don't know whether you've ever tried flipping a pancake. It's exactly the same. You see, if you do not use your voice in a way that has that sort of power, then you will not succeed. And as you're getting the pan ready to flip your pancake, what you'll do is you have to give it full gusto to throw it in the air and then catch it on the other side. But generally speaking, what happens is halfway through, you kind of, and it just folds in half, and then there's no way around it. You can't go back, everything's a mess. And it's exactly the same. If we don't give 100% into our voice, emotion, then it just ends up flat on its face, and actually you end up a little bit more embarrassed than if you were to have given it the 100% and actually pulled it off. So making sure that we use these tools effectively can help us to be a very, very powerful speaker. And even some of the tools that we've spoken about earlier on as an introduction, if we're using illustrations to make sure that they actually tie into something, that will give it the power that it needs. If it's asking questions, making sure that we're asking the right questions. If we're using stories or illustrations, do they prove the point we need them to? All of these things, making sure that we use our tools effectively, then we can be a really successful, we can be an interesting, we can be an engaging, and we can be a powerful speaker. And sometimes in life, things don't just come naturally to us. And so the best thing that we can do is to ask somebody for a little bit of help, for a little bit of training. And let's be honest, in most avenues of life, business, and professions, we get training in all sorts of different aspects. And public speaking should not be one of those areas that we put to the side without any training, without any guidance. Because when we are a confident speaker, we can have a real impact on our audience. But confidence comes from the knowledge that we have the tools and that we can do them well. A little bit like when I trained to be a farrier, because obviously people love that they love to watch a tradesman at work. When I was an apprentice, I felt unnerved with people watching me because I wasn't very good. But by the time I was an experienced tradesman, craftsman, should I say, people would stand and they would watch, and I would be unaffected. And the very same is the case when we have the skills and the knowledge that we have those skills, then we can be an effective and interesting and engaging and powerful speaker. So I hope that's been a little bit of benefit to you this afternoon. There is a few moments left for some questions. Hand back to Daniel and he can field these from you. So thank you for your time this afternoon.
Hello, thank you so much for that, Alan. Thank you guys for staying on with us. Do have a few questions that came in before you even finished. If there are any questions, please send them in now as well. I'm just going to start off with the ones that we've already got. But please do, if you have any questions, get them in the chat now, and I will get them over to Alan. Okay, so we have from Sharon Blake. She asks, how to enhance engagement through virtual when you only have sight and sound. So how to enhance engagement through virtual when you only have sight and sound.
So when you only have sight and sound, as in when you can only see the people but they can't see you?
No, I think she's just talking about in general. So like, it can be both ways, but how do you engage the other senses like smell and taste? And
okay, so I mean, storytelling is one of the most effective ways that you can engage people's senses, because obviously you're completely remote from them. So if you can think of something that will be an experience that most people will have had, and if you've got smaller audiences, then obviously you can have that conversation. But things that are very familiar to people, like wind, sunshine, heat, chocolate, coffee, these things are things that everybody has an association with of some kind or another. So I mean, that's where I tend to go, because choosing things that are familiar to most people is a good way of bringing those senses into a presentation, if that answers your question.
let us know if it answers your question, Sharon. If not, please send a follow-up one. We have another question from Lawrence as well. So when presenting, I am demonstrating software, so need to show what's on the screen. Should I have myself in the miniature in the corner?
Definitely. It always helps to have somebody there, even if it is just a tiny little picture of you in the corner. Obviously, the optimum is the listener able to see you for some of it, and which is why I don't use too many slides in my presentations, because it's that personal interaction that actually has the biggest impact. But of course, in your field, you are limited a little bit because the demonstration of technical things is necessary, and you can't do that without screen sharing what you're doing. So, but having your screen there with you there to feed off, it can help with things like facial expression, which does carry an awful lot of weight as well.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so we've got another question. So I think this one's from Sharon as well. So she asks, what would be your top tip for using virtual tools to the best effect? So, for example, getting the most out of Zoom, I'm guessing, or something along those lines.
Sorry, Dan, you froze for a minute in the middle of a sentence.
Oh, so what would be your top tip for using virtual tools to their best effect?
Well, using virtual tools to the best effect is making sure that everybody is communicating back to you. So whether it be via polls or a little bit of chat or raising their hands and actually having their own participation, they are by far the best ways to get engagement, to just get onto this one monologue situation where everyone's listening to you is not very effective at all. It's good to have as many interactive experiences as possible.
Yeah, and tools like Zoom do allow for that. So like you saw today, we was using the polls, we was using the chat. Unfortunately, we didn't have the cameras on today, but in smaller groups, that is a good idea to obviously have the camera on too. And then you also have breakout rooms as well. So there's quite a lot of options there with Zoom and really it is about looking at your training beforehand and then kind of figuring out where each tool would best fit. So is there a part when you need peer-to-peer interaction? Because then obviously breakout rooms is gonna meet that need. So really looking at the training in that sense too. We have another question from Maggie. Alan references warmth, chocolates, etc. But how does he loves his chocolate? I bet he's gonna enjoy that Lindt straight after this. Victory chocolate. How does he suggest they are introduced into? How do they suggest that they are introduced into the presentation when working with IT, for instance?
Okay, so I had a client actually that they worked with call center technology, and they had a presentation a little while back at the London Excel, and they wanted to illustrate basically what there was on the market, that there's such an overwhelming choice of different companies that provide the same sort of thing. So what they did was they illustrated that with how you would choose your bread. And then they would take a walk through, I don't know, a supermarket shop, and what drives your choice there to what drives your choice when you're on a holiday in a seaside town in the Mediterranean, you walk past a local bakery, what drives your choice there. So there's always an into finding something that will trigger one of the senses. And that's just one example, but sometimes it takes a little bit of thought outside the box, or thinking in your daily life, what you're doing now and how can it relate or resonate.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. We have another question in from Ed. So is there a danger using stories with highly technical people, particularly when they are short of time?
Yes. Is the blunt answer. So stories need to have a purpose. And if that story illustrates the point that you're trying to make in your presentation, then that's great. If the story is added for no reason, or if it's too long, then that's not great, because they will get very irritated very quickly. So there needs to be a point, and they need to be short and succinct. And depending on the length of your talk, how much scope that you've got within your objectives, then you need to be careful with the stories that you choose. So definitely, yes, be careful.
And I guess there's different types of learners, and not even just different types of learners, but different groups of people enjoy different types of information as well, isn't it? So like, if you're talking to a technical bunch, then, you know, maybe a story that has elements of that in there. So something that they'll be able to relate to in that sense. Yeah. So we've got one from Ray. So we've got questions flying in now. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get through all of them, but we'll try. So some programs like Teams does not lend itself to showing audiences while you talk. When maybe presenting technical courses, how best to get around this? So some programs like Teams do not lend themselves to showing audiences whilst you talk. When maybe presenting technical courses, how can you best get around this?
So I'm assuming that you mean that when you screen share, it means that you can't see.
You can't see the little floating head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in that case, then visualization is very important. So professional footballers do it before a game, don't they? They envisage themselves of what they're going to do during the game, even if they don't actually get to pull it off. They envisage a crowd going wild, perhaps, or something like that. And when we're actually delivering something and we cannot see our audience, then we're just going to have to imagine how they would react. And with that in our mind, that helps us to continue to be as natural as we can be in that unnatural situation. It is something that is very unnatural, and it takes a little time to train our mind to think in those ways. But the more practice we get, the more that we try, the more likely we will be able to envisage our audience, even if we can't see them.
Yeah, no, definitely. I remember when I first started these webinars, it is a bit unnerving and a bit strange because you're not getting the biofeedback that you're used to. Like now I can see Alan, he's smiling. I know I said something interesting or something good. So I'm like, yeah, good. But when you don't get that, it can be a bit disconcerting and a bit off. But like Alan said, visualization. And also with time, you do start to get used to it. And, you know, if you talk to yourself anyway, that helps. I always think as well to have, I don't know, for me anyway, it always helps to see a face, any face, even if it's my own face. It just helps to see a human. So sometimes I'll just have, if everyone's screen is off, I'll at least have my screen there. So it will be like my friend, my twin, will be there cheering me on in a sense. So yeah, that's what I would say for that one. And then we have a question from Ian. So when should one not use Zoom and rather opt for using live streaming only? Do you understand that one fully?
When should one not use Zoom and use live stream only?
Yeah.
It's got to depend on how much interaction that you need from the audience. There are obviously the skills that you use as a public speaker, they will convey, and just because nobody's there to give you their answers necessarily doesn't mean that you don't ask the questions. So your delivery shouldn't really change an awful lot, regardless of what platform you're using it on and whether your audience can respond or not. So it just depends on functionality, really, on what's best for you in that instance.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. We've got another one in from Caroline. We're going to just do a couple more of these and then we're going to have to wrap it up, guys. So how would you engage when the participants are all using one smart screen? So everyone's on one smart screen. So there's a whole team of people huddled around one computer. Therefore, polls don't work and using the chat box kind of becomes cumbersome unless they're all going to line up, I guess, and kind of type in turn. So how could we get around that?
Well, I haven't had. I should imagine that the microphone in this instance would be a good way so that you can actually talk like humans. So it makes it more of a real life conversation, and you know, the people that are in the room that you're talking to, well, they'll have a certain etiquette in terms of who speaks and who doesn't speak. But if you notice they're talking over one another, you can sort of look after that yourself, can't you, as the you know, when you're overseeing that conversation.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, so yeah, that is exactly what I would say. Have your video or have them have their video on so you can see the whole room, and then they can obviously interact right in front of you and between themselves, socially distanced, obviously, and then obviously you can engage with them off the back of that. So we've got a tip here from James. James says he wants to remind everyone that good breathing is really important, and to make sure that you've been to to make sure that you've been to the loo before the session, which is true. Which is true.
Thanks, James.
Yeah, on that note, guys, we're going to have to wrap things up there. I just want to thank you all for obviously staying on with us. Really appreciate that. And yeah, it's been a pleasure to have you speaking with us, Alan. It's been a different type of session. Really enjoyed it with the engagement and no slides. It does make for a difference. So I thank you for that. Thank you, everyone. We will be back again next week with another weekly webinar. I won't be here. I'm going to be on annual leave, but Amanda Rosewood will be leading that session. So please do sign up for that one. I did send the that link in the chat for you guys to sign up for. So please do click on that link and get registered. And we will be back again next week. Alan, do you have any last words for everyone?
Just thank you for showing up. It's been lovely to see you all, even if it's just your names on the screen. We've got some faces coming back on now, though. But yeah, it's been lovely to be with you all, and thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for saying thanks. Enjoying my leave. Thank you. It's got so many thank yous coming through. I appreciate it, everyone. Thank you for your time. Again, I just put the link in the chat for you to go and check it out and register for future sessions. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Everyone, have a good morning, evening, afternoon, night, wherever you are. And yeah, we'll see each other again soon. Bye for now.